The two-story house on Maple Street was quiet as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the walls in hues of amber and gold. Diane, a nurse who worked double shifts at the local hospital, was just setting the table for dinner. She hummed softly, a rare sound of contentment since the divorce 2 years ago. Upstairs, Ethan and Lily's voices echoed. At 11 and 14, the siblings were polar opposites, but inseparable. Ethan was all energy and noise, his room a whirlwind of books, toys, and half-finished crafts. Lily, on the other hand, was meticulous and private, her room a sanctuary of neat stacks of books, soft fairy lights, and lavender-scented candles. The two had weathered the storm of their parents' divorce together, forming a bond strengthened by shared grief and resilience. But lately, that bond felt strained. "Lily, what's taking so long?" Ethan called, leaning against her doorframe. "Homework," came her muffled reply. "You're always doing homework," he teased, trying to coax her out of the room. "Come on, dinner's ready. And Mom's actually making something that's not from the freezer." Lily appeared in the doorway, her face pale and her expression guarded. "I'm coming," she said, brushing past him. Ethan frowned as he followed her down the stairs. Something was different about his sister lately. She was quieter, more withdrawn, and she avoided their usual routines. He missed the days when she'd race him to the dinner table or playfully tease him about his messy room. At the table, Diane beamed. "I made spaghetti," she announced, as if it were a grand feast. Andrew's favorite. At the mention of Andrew, Ethan noticed Lily's shoulders stiffen. "Speaking of Andrew," Diane continued, her tone light, "he's joining us for dinner tomorrow. I think you two are really going to like him once you get to know him better." Lily poked at her food. Her appetite seemingly vanished. Ethan glanced between his sister and their mother, sensing the tension but unsure how to address it. "Do we have to?" Lily finally mumbled. Diane sighed. "Lily, I know this is hard for you, but Andrew's a good man. He makes me happy." The conversation ended there, but the unease lingered in the air. Ethan caught Lily's eye, and she quickly looked away. That night, after the house had fallen silent, Ethan heard something that made his heart ache, the soft sound of Lily crying. He pressed his ear against the wall they shared, his chest tightening. "Lily," he whispered, knocking softly. The crying stopped abruptly. "I'm fine," came her muffled reply. Ethan hesitated, then said, "If you ever want to talk, I'm here." There was no response, but Ethan stayed by the wall for a few more moments, a growing sense of worry settling over him. The next evening, Andrew arrived just before dinner, carrying a bouquet of flowers for Diane and small gifts for the kids. He handed Ethan a box of baseball cards and Lily a notebook with a floral cover. "For the writer in the family," Andrew said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Thank you," Lily said softly, though she didn't look up. Ethan observed the exchange closely. Andrew seemed charming on the surface, polished and confident. But there was something about the way he interacted with Lily that felt off. During dinner, Andrew dominated the conversation, telling stories about his job at a marketing firm and cracking jokes that made Diane laugh. But Ethan noticed how often Andrew's attention drifted to Lily, how his compliments, though subtle, seemed too personal. "You've got a good head on your shoulders, Lily," Andrew said, pouring himself another glass of wine. "Smart, mature, beyond your years." Lily tensed, her fork clattering against her plate. Diane didn't seem to notice. "She's always been like that," she said proudly. "Top of her class." Ethan glanced at his sister. She was staring at her plate, her face pale. That night, Ethan couldn't stop thinking about the way Lily had reacted to Andrew's words. Something wasn't right, and he was determined to figure out what it was. He pulled out an old spiral notebook from his desk, its pages mostly blank, and decided to start writing down everything that seemed off about Andrew. April 5th, 7:30 p.m. Andrew gave Lily a notebook as a gift. She didn't seem happy about it. April 5th, 8:15 p.m. Andrew called Lily mature beyond her years. She looked uncomfortable. The next morning, Ethan asked Lily directly, "Do you like Andrew?" She hesitated. "Why are you asking?" Because you don't seem like yourself when he's around. Lily stared at him for a moment, then shook her head. It's nothing. Just drop it. Ethan. But Ethan couldn't drop it. Over the next few weeks, he kept adding to his notebook. He noticed how Lily would leave the room whenever Andrew entered, or how she always kept her bedroom door locked now. April 10th, 6:45 p.m. Andrew stood outside Lily's door for 5 minutes before knocking. She told him she was busy. April 12th, 4:30 p.m. Andrew touched Lily's shoulder in the kitchen. She flinched. Ethan showed the notebook to Diane one evening after Andrew had left. "Mom, I think something's wrong," he said, his voice steady despite his nerves. Diane skimmed the entries, frowning. "Ethan, this doesn't mean anything. Andrew's just trying to be nice." "But Lily doesn't like it." Ethan insisted. "She acts different when he's around." Diane sighed. "Ethan, I know you're protective of your sister, but you're reading too much into this. Andrew's a good man. He's not trying to hurt anyone." Frustrated, Ethan took the notebook back to his room. If Diane wouldn't listen, he'd have to find another way to protect Lily. One night, Ethan was jolted awake by the sound of knocking on their shared wall. 3 quick knocks. Too slow. Their secret code. He rushed to Lily's room to find her sitting on the bed, her knees drawn to her chest. She looked small and scared, like a child despite her 14 years. "What happened?" Ethan asked, his voice low. "Andrew came in here," she whispered, her voice trembling. "He said he just wanted to talk, but he wouldn't leave. He kept calling me sweetheart and telling me how mature I am. It felt wrong." Ethan's fist clenched. "You have to tell Mom." "She won't believe me," Lily said bitterly. "She's so happy with him. She doesn't want to see anything bad." "Then I'll make her see," Ethan said fiercely. "I'll find a way. I promise." Lily looked at him, her eyes filled with tears. "Why are you doing this?" "Because you're my sister," Ethan said simply. Lily hugged him tightly, and for the first time in weeks, she felt a small flicker of hope. Ethan's notebook grew thicker by the day. Each interaction, every uncomfortable look or inappropriate comment Andrew made toward Lily was carefully recorded. Ethan was methodical, writing down the time, place, and what happened in as much detail as he could. April 15th, 9 p.m., Andrew asked Lily why she was so quiet lately and told her she needed to loosen up. April 16th, 8:30 p.m., Andrew stood in Lily's doorway again, just watching her. She pretended not to notice. April 18th, 10:15 p.m., Andrew walked into Lily's room without knocking. She asked him to leave, but he stayed for 5 minutes talking about how lucky she was to have him around. Ethan didn't stop there. He began sneaking his old phone around to record Andrew's interactions with Lily. It was outdated and barely functional, but the camera worked well enough. He hid it under the couch cushions, behind bookshelves, and even in the kitchen pantry. Lily, hesitant at first, started helping. She began writing in the notebook too, her handwriting shaky but precise. Lily's entry. April 19th, 8 p.m. Andrew told me I looked pretty in the dress Mom bought me for school. He said I should wear more often. I felt sick. Ethan saw the toll it was taking on his sister. Her appetite had vanished, and she rarely left her room anymore. Even at dinner, she was silent, pushing food around her plate while Diane and Andrew chatted like everything was normal. One night, after Diane had gone to bed, Ethan confronted Andrew directly. "What do you want with Lily?" he demanded, his small frame trembling with anger. Andrew looked at him, his smile cold and calculating. "Careful, kid," he said softly. "You're smart, but you don't know what you're playing with. Stay out of things that don't concern you." "It does concern me," Ethan shot back. "She's my sister." Andrew's eyes narrowed. "And I'm your mom's boyfriend. You wouldn't want to upset her, would you?" Ethan didn't reply, but his resolve hardened. Andrew had revealed his true colors, and Ethan knew he had to act fast. It was a quiet Tuesday evening when things finally came to a head. Diane had taken an extra shift at the hospital, leaving Andrew in charge of the kids. Ethan had planned to spend the night quietly in his room. But as soon as he heard Andrew's footsteps heading toward Lily's room, his instincts kicked in. He grabbed his phone and crept into the hallway. pressing his back against the wall. Lily, can you call me? Andrew's voice was soft, almost gushing. I'm busy, Lily replied, her voice trembling. Come on. Andrew persisted. Just for a minute. Ethan heard the faint creak of Lily's door opening. Peeking around the corner, he saw Andrew step inside. Closing the door behind him, Ethan's heart raced. He positioned his phone to record through the narrow crack between the door and the frame. Why are you always so nervous around me? Andrew asked. I'm not, Lily said, but her voice betrayed her fear. You don't have to be afraid of me. Andrew continued, stepping closer. We're family now. I just want us to be close. Please leave, Lily said, her voice barely audible. Andrew reached out, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Don't be like that. Sweetheart, I'm only trying to help. Stop. Lily's voice cracked. Ethan couldn't take it anymore. He burst into the room, phone in hand. Get away from her, he shouted. Andrew turned, his expression twisting into anger. What do you think you're doing? You little brat. I'm recording you, Ethan said, his voice shaking but defiant. So everyone will know what you're really like. Andrew lunged at him, but Ethan darted out of the room, running down the hallway. Give me that phone, Andrew roared. Ethan fled to the kitchen, where the house phone sat on the counter. He dialed 911 with trembling fingers. 911. What's your emergency? My mom's boyfriend is hurting my sister, Ethan said, his voice barely steady. He's in our house right now. Please send help. The dispatcher asked for their address and reassured Ethan that help was on the way. Ethan stayed on the line until he heard the sound of sirens. Moments later, red and blue lights flashed through the windows. The police arrived quickly, bursting through the front door. Ethan pointed them toward the hallway, where Andrew stood frozen in Lily's doorway. He's in there, Ethan said, his voice trembling. The officers moved swiftly, handcuffing Andrew despite his protests. This is ridiculous, Andrew shouted. I haven't done anything wrong. Tell that to the video, Ethan said, holding up his phone. As the officers led Andrew out of the house, Diane arrived, her face pale and panicked. What's going on? She demanded. Mom, Ethan said, his voice steady despite the tears in his eyes. Andrew's been hurting Lily. I have proof. He handed her the phone and the notebook. Diane flipped through the pages, her face crumpling as the truth sank in. Lily, she whispered, turning to her daughter, who stood trembling in the hallway. Why didn't you tell me? I did, Lily said, her voice breaking. You didn't believe me. Diane collapsed into a chair, sobbing. I'm so sorry. I didn't see it. I didn't want to see it. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of police interviews, therapy sessions, and rebuilding trust. Ethan and Lily moved in with their father temporarily, giving Diane time to reflect and heal. Ethan's evidence was crucial in ensuring Andrew's conviction. The video, paired with the detailed notebook, painted a clear picture of his predatory behavior. For Lily, the road to recovery was slow but steady. She started therapy, where she learned to process her trauma and reclaim her sense of safety. Ethan, too, attended therapy. His counselor helped him unpack the anger and guilt he carried, reminding him that he had done everything possible to protect his sister. Diane worked tirelessly to rebuild her children's trust. She attended therapy herself, confronting the blind spots that had allowed Andrew into their lives. Months later, the siblings returned to their mother's house. It wasn't the same as before, but it was a start. One night, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Lily turned to Ethan. You saved me, she said softly. We saved each other, Ethan replied, tapping the railing 3 quick knocks. Too slow. It was their signal, their promise, their unspoken bond. And for the first time in a long time, the house on Maple Street felt like home again. The silence in the house felt heavy after Andrew was gone. Diane, overwhelmed with guilt and regret, spent her days trying to piece her family back together. But rebuilding trust wasn't easy. Ethan and Lily stayed with their father, Paul, for several months. He lived in a smaller house on the other side of town, but it felt safe. Paul was attentive, And while he didn't hover, he made it clear that he was always there if they needed him. Diane called every day, but the siblings rarely answered. Lily was still processing her fear and anger, and Ethan was focused on protecting his sister. One Saturday afternoon, Diane showed up unannounced at Paul's house. She stood at the door, clutching a small bag, her eyes red from crying. "I just want to talk," she said softly when Paul opened the door. He nodded and let her in. Ethan and Lily were sitting at the dining table, working on a puzzle. When they saw Diane, they both stiffened. "Hey, kids," Diane said hesitantly, taking a seat across from them. Ethan's hand tightened on a puzzle piece, and Lily stared down at the table. "I've been working on myself," Diane said after a moment. "I'm seeing a therapist, Dr. Ross. She's helping me understand how I missed all the signs." Neither of them responded. "I'm so sorry for what happened," Diane continued, her voice breaking. "I was so focused on being happy again that I didn't see how much you were both hurting. I should have listened to you. Lily, I should have believed you." Lily finally looked up, her eyes filled with tears. "Why didn't you?" she whispered. Diane's shoulders sagged. I wanted to believe that Andrew was a good man because it made everything easier. It made me feel like our family wasn't broken anymore. But I was wrong, and you paid the price for my mistake." Ethan's voice was steady but sharp. "You didn't just make a mistake. Mom, you let someone dangerous into our home." Diane nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I know, and I'll spend the rest of my life trying to make it up to you. But I understand if you don't want to come home yet, or ever. I just needed you to know how sorry I am." For a long moment, the room was silent. Then Lily stood up and walked over to Diane. She hesitated, then hugged her tightly. "I love you, Mom," Lily said softly. "But it's going to take time." Ethan stayed at the table, watching them. His jaw was set, but his eyes softened slightly. "We'll see," he said, his voice quiet but resolute. In the weeks that followed, Diane worked hard to prove she was serious about change. She continued therapy, joined a support group for survivors and their families, and respected the boundaries Ethan and Lily had set. Meanwhile, Lily began to find her voice. She shared her story in group therapy, helping other teens who had experienced similar situations. Each time she spoke, she felt a little stronger, a little less afraid. Ethan, too, found ways to channel his emotions. He joined a writing club at school, using his notebook to craft stories about courage and resilience. One day, during a group session, Lily met a girl named Maddie. Maddie was 15 and struggling with her own story of abuse. "You're so brave," Maddie said after Lily shared her experience. "I didn't feel brave at the time," Lily admitted, "but my brother believed in me, even when I didn't believe in myself. That's what kept me going." Maddie smiled faintly. "I wish I had someone like that." "You do now," Lily said, squeezing her hand. 3 months after Andrew's arrest, Diane invited Ethan and Lily to dinner at the house on Maple Street. She promised it would be a safe, low-pressure evening. Paul agreed to drive them there and wait outside, just in case they wanted to leave early. When they arrived, the house looked different. The walls had been painted a soft yellow, and the old family photos had been rehung. Diane had even added new locks to the doors, a gesture that hadn't gone unnoticed by Ethan. "Hi," Diane said nervously as they walked in. She wore a simple sweater and jeans, looking far more relaxed than she had in months. "I'm so glad you're here." Dinner was awkward at first, but Diane kept the conversation light, asking about their new school and hobbies. Slowly, the tension began to ease. After dinner, they sat in the living room, sipping hot chocolate. Diane hesitated, then said, "I want to ask you something, but only if you're comfortable answering." Lily nodded cautiously. "What can I do to make you feel safe again? To earn your trust?" Lily exchanged a glance with Ethan, who nodded subtly. "Keep going to therapy," Lily said, "and listen to us. Really listen. If we ever feel uncomfortable again, believe us." Diane nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. "I will. I promise." Ethan added, "And don't try to replace Dad. We're okay with things being the way they are." Diane managed a small smile. I understand. It wasn't a perfect evening, but it was a start. Over time, life began to feel normal again. Lily returned to dance class, finding solace in movement and music. Ethan joined a local soccer team, where he made new friends and rediscovered his love for the game. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Lily turned to Ethan. Remember the wall knock? She asked. 3 quick, 2 slow. Ethan said, smiling. We should make a new one. Lily suggested. Not for danger, for hope. Ethan thought for a moment, then tapped the railing. 2 quick knocks. 1 slow. 2 quick. What does it mean? Lily asked. It means we're okay now, Ethan said. Lily smiled, repeating the pattern. We are. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the siblings leaned against each other, their bond stronger than ever. They had faced the darkness together and emerged into the light. And while the road ahead would still have its challenges, they knew they could handle anything as long as they had each other. The house on Maple Street was no longer the same, and neither were the people who lived there. The cracks in their family had been exposed, but instead of breaking apart, they had started the slow process of rebuilding. It wasn't easy, healing never is, but step by step, they found their way back to each other. Ethan and Lily carried scars from their ordeal, invisible but deep. Yet, those scars didn't define them. Instead, they became a testament to their strength, their bond, and their ability to stand against darkness, even when it felt overwhelming. Diane had learned a painful but invaluable lesson. Love is not blind, and trust must be earned, not demanded. Her determination to heal her family was unwavering. Though she knew she could never erase the past, she vowed to never ignore her children's voices again. Ethan continued to write in his notebook, though now it was filled with stories of hope and resilience instead of fear and suspicion. Lily danced more than ever, finding freedom in movement and expression. And together, they laughed, argued, and grew stronger, rediscovering the joy of simply being siblings. As they sat on the porch one evening, bathed in the glow of a setting sun, Lily reached out and tapped the wooden railing. 2 quick. 1 slow. 2 quick. Ethan grinned, and they were. The road ahead would have its bumps and turns, but they knew one thing for certain. They would face it together. Because in the quiet moments, in the small gestures, and in the fiercest of battles, courage isn't always loud. Sometimes, it's in the silent walls, the unspoken promises, and the unwavering love between 2 siblings who refuse to give up on each other. The silent walls of their home, once witnesses to fear, now held the echoes of laughter, resilience, and hope, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, there is always a way back to the light.